Hello and welcome back to Mr. Haas's Math Help videos. Today I'd like us to look at Lesson 12, opposites. Opposites are nothing more than positive and negative numbers. Opposite means change the sign. So if you've got a positive, change the sign to a negative. If it's a negative, change the sign to a positive. It's the same number, just a different sign. So let's take a look at what we're talking about here. So a couple of examples. If we had the number 5, the opposite of 5 would be negative 5. If we had a number like negative 3, the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. Now you'll notice I'm not putting a plus sign in because that can sometimes get a little confusing. We've known these numbers since we started math, so we just don't put a plus sign in. If we have a negative 1/2, looks like that. So the opposite of negative 1/2 is 1/2. If we have positive 0.7, our opposite is negative 0.7. Okay? All right, so that is our opposites. The only number that is its own opposite is 0. The opposite of 0 is 0. You can't have a negative 0 or a positive 0. It's just that's what it is. So now let's take a look at how this looks on a number line. So we've got a number line here really quickly. And I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3, and negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Okay? Sorry, they're not spaced really well. But if we were to look at, let's see, graphing a number like, let's say, 1 and 1/2. Well, 1 and 1/2 would be halfway between the number 1 and the number 2. And I'm going to label it like this. I'm going to put a little arrow, see? That's where my negative, or my 1 and 1/2. Well, the opposite of that, we're just going to change the sign. And it is going to be between the negative 1 and the negative 2. So this would be where our negative 1 and 1/2 would be, right here at this line. You'll notice that they're the same distance, and I'm sorry I didn't get these absolutely the same distance here, a little sloppy line graph making. But notice it's this distance here. We pass the 1 and we're halfway between the 1 and the 2. Here we pass the 1 and we're halfway between the negative 1 and the negative 2. They're the same distance from 0. It would be like if you were at your house and you walked 1 block north, came back to your house, and then walked 1 block south. It's the same distance, just in opposite directions. Okay? So now let's talk a little bit about positive and negative number situations. You're going to be given these little terms, like sentences that are explaining a situation. And you need to think of them in terms of 0. Which way are they from 0? Are they positive or are they negative? So let's say you got a scratch-off lottery ticket, okay? So, well, let's, first of all, yay, you won. Congratulations. You won $10. Okay, so it was a pretty good win for a lottery ticket. Now, that means, you maybe got it from somebody. It was maybe a Christmas present or something. You got it in a Christmas card. So that would be a plus 10 because you got that. You are that much ahead or away from 0. Okay? So you've done that. Now let's talk about maybe we're at a football game. And the football players they hike the ball, and unfortunately one of the other team gets in and tackles our quarterback 5 yards behind the starting point where the line of scrimmage. So this would be a situation where we started out at the line of scrimmage, and our quarterback faded back, or the ball got to them, and they got tackled here 5 yards from where they started. This would almost be our 0 point here, and this would be -5. So we had a loss of 5 yards. So we have to go that 5 yards just to get back to where we started from on the next play. Okay, so that would be a negative number. If we were talking about below sea level, all right, so here's our sea, happy ocean and all, and we've got a fish, and here's the fish. It's going to look like one of those Pepperidge Farm fish, okay? There we go, a little more like him. We can put a smile face on him. He's below sea level. Sea level is going to be considered 0. That's our 0, right? And he is below sea level. Well, we as humans like to be at sea level because that's where we can breathe. So we consider that our kind of our 0 point. So if this fish is at, let's say, 15 feet below sea level, 15 feet below sea level, well, then that means that he is at -15. I should say they are. We don't know what gender our fish is. So that is negative 15 feet, because it is below sea level. Okay? If we're talking temperatures, well, we know that water freezes at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. If we're talking Celsius, at 32 Fahrenheit, and at 0 degrees Celsius. But if we're talking about 0, okay, so if we say, wow, it was so cold, meaning that we're in the cold months of the year here, that thermometer was all the way down at 3 degrees below 0. All right. Well, that would be -3 degrees Fahrenheit, right? -3 degrees. That's 3 degrees below 0. And normally when we're talking about temperatures, oh man, it was 76 degrees yesterday in Florida. Well, that's 76 degrees in Florida is going to be a positive 76 degrees because it is 76 degrees all the way down to 0. So you remember we're measuring the distance from 0. This one here, my goodness, our 0 degrees Fahrenheit, really cold day here in Plainfield, we've got a -3, so that's the distance from 0. Okay, so that's so far our opposites, and now let's talk a little bit about writing them. So sometimes you'll get a word problem, and it'll be like you have a number line, and they just are going to discriminately give you a number, like, oh, let's say 1, 2, 3. The number 3. Okay, what is the opposite of number 3? Well, it's the same distance, the absolute value, the distance from 0. So we're going to go and find the same distance. This was 1, 2, 3 over. Here's 1, 2, 3 over. And it's got the same number. It's just it has a negative sign. So that's how that works. It's the same sign, and it's the same distance. It's the same number. It's the same distance from 0. It's just the sign is different. If we were to say, okay, they give you a number like, say, -2 is the number they give you. Well, the opposite of that, notice we're 1, 2 away. The absolute value of -2 is +2. And so this is where we would find that one. It's 1, 2 away from 0. So we're always looking to see how far we are from 0. If we're talking about, let's say, a positive 1.5, and notice that I called it positive 1.5, but we really don't have to. So here's our 1.5. The distance from 0 is 1.5, so we're going to go on to the negative side, 1 and 1/2. And this would be the opposite of 1.5, and of course, it's -1.5. Okay, very good. All right, so one last thing to cover with you is that sometimes they're going to try and trick you, okay? They're going to say, okay, what is the opposite of the opposite? And you'll say, what? Well, let's take a number. All right, here's our number, 3. And this is our opposite. The opposite of 3 would be negative 3. Well, the op of an op, or opposite of an opposite, as they are going to be asking you for. So here's our 3. The opposite is negative 3. The opposite of negative 3 is right back to good old 3. Another example of that. Minus 4. The opposite of minus 4 is 4. The opposite of minus 4 is minus 4. It just gets you right back to where you started, the original number that you had. 5/8. The opposite is minus 5/8. The opposite of the opposite, you're right back to 5/8. So there you go. Sometimes they're going to throw those crazy word problems at you. So just take your time going through those and look what they're asking for. All right. Hope this helps. Talk to you later. Bye.